and have shown leadership in doing so. We would also like to pay tribute to the chair of this meeting. In the draft recommendation, we would like to insert a reference in paragraph 27 of this draft recommendation in the preamble section, also the first paragraph of the operative paragraphs. In principle, we support aid for countries to implement their strategies, and we wish for this to be reflected more comprehensively in the preambular text. We fully support the statements made by Syria and Ethiopia on the subject of the modification of the work of the GEF and the need to provide resources to all countries which have the right to receive aid from GEF. That would be a significant contribution to the effectiveness of the implementation of the global framework. When it comes to providing information on the process to prepare strategies and action plans in point 2 of the recommendation, it's also reasonable to include information on the provision of resources and other possibilities for the implementation of strategies and action plans in developing countries. We will send in writing our proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Russian Federation. On my screen, the list is like this: Norway, Indonesia, Burundi. Podium, floor to the Norway, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Norway would like to emphasize the importance of NBSAPs as the main vehicle for implementing the Convention and the KM-GBF. We want to underline the importance of the long-term cyclical approach to implementation of the KM-GBF and its 2050 goals, with the interplay between the findings of the upcoming global collective reviews and the future updates of the NBSAPs. We must decode the 2030 targets through planning, reporting, monitoring, and review. Mr. Chair, international cooperation and financial assistance is key. We welcome the GEF announcement from yesterday, May 20th, where the GEF has approved a new round of project preparation grants and set aside more than $70 million for 18 projects in 21 developing countries. We'd also like to highlight the importance of the NBSAP Accelerator co-chaired by Colombia and Germany. Mr. Chair, the quality of the NBSAPs as set out in the decision from Montreal count not just how fast you can produce it. Norway is undertaking an economy-wide and inclusive NBSAP process in order to effectively follow up on the global goals and targets in Norway and contributing to them globally, which in the whole of government manner includes all relevant government ministries and civil society, including women, youth, and indigenous peoples. For the first time in Norwegian history, we have run joint climate and biodiversity stakeholder meetings. And in the end, the NBSAP will be discussed and adopted in the Norwegian Parliament. Mr. Chair, we will deliver our NBSAP in advance of COP16 in Cali, Colombia, using the standard template, and would like to mention the deadline in the draft recommendations. We will submit our suggested changes to the draft recommendation in writing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Norway. We have the list like this on the screen: Indonesia, Burundi, India. Floor to Indonesia, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Under this agenda item, Indonesia would like to raise 3 issues. First, Indonesia wishes to inform the meeting that we have finalized the formulation of our draft NBSAP and currently is being reviewed and fine-tuned. The formulation of the draft NBSAP is an inclusive process with active participation from various related stakeholders, including relevant minister, non-governmental organizations, youth, local communities, scientists, and the support of development partners. The NBSAP draft has also been integrated into the background documentation for Indonesia's long-term development planning under the vision of Golden Indonesia 2045, wherein biodiversity management achievements have been identified as one of the 45 national development indicators. Second, in line with Decision 15.6, Indonesia believes that the process of updating and revising national biodiversity strategies and action plan should be done in parallel with the process of identifying the challenges in implementing these strategies and action, as well as the process of identifying water solution in addressing these challenges. This is why in the Decision 15/6, the parties not only include the obligation under paragraph 6 and 7, but also includes paragraph 27, which provide the means of implementation necessary in the form of financial and technical support, especially to developing countries, in particular LDCs and SIDCs. In this connection, we support statement made by Brazil, Argentina, and other countries on the need to make reference to paragraph 27 of Decision 15.6 into the draft SBI decision. And finally, third, we would like to convey our appreciation to the report of the multi-year program of work on implementation of Article 8G and related provision of the Convention, in particular relates to issues of indigenous people and local communities. Chair, in closing, our delegation would like to reiterate our concern on the biodiversity disaster in areas of conflict, including in Palestine. This ongoing situation has far-reaching and long-term consequences on biodiversity. Our delegation stands ready to engage constructively with colleagues to achieve the best possible outcome of our SBI meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Next in line, Burundi and India. Floor to the Burundi, please.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Burundi supports the statement made by Ethiopia on behalf of the African Group on the review of the implementation and alignment of MB-SAPs with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Burundi thanks the Secretariat for providing in good time the necessary funds for, or as part of the project, support for early action for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Burundi is currently working tirelessly to finalize and present its strategies and action plan for biodiversity, which is will be revised and updated, including national targets to the Executive Secretary to prepare a global overview of information. Burundi would request capacity building throughout the entire MB-SAP review process and the provision of necessary means for the implementation of MB-SAPs and their action plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Burundi. Next in line are India, Burkina Faso. India, floor is given. You have the floor, India.
Thank you, Chair. India appreciate the comprehensive findings on the analysis of national biodiversity strategies and action plans submitted during the implementation of Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011 and 2020 and key challenges in revising the nation targets. You refer to the ambitious targets adopted under KMGF. You wish to emphasize that means of implementation, especially financing mechanisms, should match the ambience of KMGF. You would like to state that achievement of these ambitious targets would require new and additional financial resources. The KMGF needs to be practical and implementable, keeping in view of circumstances, priorities, and capabilities of respective countries. Conservation of biodiversity must also be based on the principle of common but differentiated responsibility according to respective capabilities. India appreciates the efforts taken by the CBD Secretariat in organizing regional and sub-regional dialogues on NBSAP. It has provided opportunity to parties share their experience and learn from other experience in the revision and updation of NBSAP aligned with the framework. The structured session on developing capacity building and biodiversity finance plans were useful. India has adopted whole of government and whole of society approach by involving all the relevant stakeholders at national, subnational and civil society organizations towards updating its national biodiversity strategy and action plan in alignment with the global biodiversity framework to adopt its own national biodiversity targets. During the revision, the common indicators set forth in KMGF and guidance documents are duly considered and adopted in India according to the national circumstances, priorities and capabilities. We are also encouraging our subnational governments to prepare the biodiversity strategy and action plan for effective implementation of India's NBSAP. India has already submitted a proposal for accessing GBF fund to the GEF. India would like to mention here that CBD Secretariat or GBF Council may develop an appropriate institutional mechanism for ensuring a transparent and consultative mechanism for sanctioning of the project preparatory grant. India is happy to inform that it would be submitting the updated NBSAP in the required template well before the COP16. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. The parties list are like this. Next, Burkina Faso, Lao People's Democratic Republic, Cote d'Ivoire. Burkina Faso, you have the floor, please.
Monsieur le Président,
Chair, Burkina Faso formally supports the position of the African group as set out by Ethiopia. Burkina Faso recognizes the efforts undertaken by the Secretariat to provide this document to us. The review of MBSAPs and the national target setting aligned with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is a complex process due to its pan-governmental and pan-societal nature. Therefore, Burkina Faso congratulates the countries which have already submitted their documents. In Burkina Faso, the review process is in its last phase, despite the specific difficulties faced by my country. To date, diagnostic studies on the alignment of policies and strategies, on the monitoring and evaluation system, and on the financing for biodiversity have been concluded. Provisional national targets and goals aligned with the goals of the GBF are available. The review of the NBSAPs itself is underway, and that document will soon be available. These results have been achieved thanks to the efforts of our government and also thanks to the financial and technical support from the GEF and its partners through the Early Action Support Project for the Global Biodiversity Framework. Burkina Faso encourages all parties to speed up the review process and the process to update MBSAPs and national targets and goals aligned with the global framework so that they can submit them to the Secretariat of the CBD in a timely manner. To conclude, Burkina Faso supports the recommendation for the GEF and its implementation agencies to set out procedures for the provision of funds to eligible countries in a timely manner to conclude the review process for MBSAPs and for national target setting. We will also submit our proposals for amendments to the text in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. Next in line are Lao People's Democratic Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya. Lao People's Democratic Republic, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving this opportunity. Lao PDR would like to update you on the progress of NBSAP update process. Mr. Chairman, similar to many countries around the world, Lao PDR is currently in the process of updating NBSAPs in the alignment with 23 targets of Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Under the support of Global Environment Facility Circle 8 through 3 UNDP's global projects. We have also received the support from GIZ through the project of the Protection, Sustainable Use of Forest Ecosystem Biodiversity, or PROFAB, to support the NBSAP update process. Lao PDR wishes to take this opportunity to express our sincerest appreciation to the Secretariat of CBD, Global Environment Facility, UNDP GIZ, for their considerable and continued support. Currently, the international and national specialists are taking dedication in assisting us in reviewing and updating NBSAPs. A series of stakeholder consultation workshops regarding the preparation and arrangements for the review and update of NBSAP have been organized. Mr. Chairman, Lao PDR would like to reaffirm our commitments to continue working in partnership with parties, the Secretary of CBD, our development partners, and all entire body involved to embark on updating and implementing the NBSAPs in alignment with 4 main goals and 23 targets of GBF to progress our country to achieve the vision of a world living in harmony with nature by 2050. To ensure that the updated NBSAPs meet the needs of sustainable use and consumption of natural resources and biodiversity in all aspects. The Gender and Biodiversity Plan and Action, Plan of Action, as well as One Health approach will be mainstream in the NBSAP. Furthermore, the Financial Action Plans and Monitoring Framework will be also included in order to ensure that the updated NBSAP is going to be implemented and remain on track. Mr. Chairman, realizing the limitation of time, Lao PDR would like to conclude the statement by expressing our appreciation and acknowledgement to the Secretariat for their valuable assistance and hard work in selecting the entities, especially the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, as the host of the regional and sub-regional technical and scientific cooperation centers to support the implementation of Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In this regard, Lao PDR would like to take this opportunity to ask the Secretary of CBD to continue assisting us in accelerating the process of approval and signing the host agreements expected in COP16 to CBD. Lao PDR would also like to request the Secretariat to continue mobilizing sources from potential donors to better enable ACB or other selected entities to host the regional and sub-regional technical and scientific cooperation support centers to embark on delivering support to the party to put into action the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, in particular, the monitoring framework. Asate Sana, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Lao People's Democratic Republic. Cote d'Ivoire, floor is you. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, Chair. Cote d'Ivoire supports the position of the African group as set out by Ethiopia. Cote d'Ivoire thanks Jeff for its financial support for the review of NBSAPs. Our review is currently underway. We are awaiting results from consultancies to perform consultations and workshops based on a pan-governmental and pan-social approach in order to set our national targets, which are aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework. Côte d'Ivoire congratulates the 8 parties which have already submitted their NBSAPs, while urging all parties to keep to the deadline set out for the development and submission of their NBSAPs, which are aligned with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This would avoid the submission of NBSAPs at the end of or even after the period set out. In addition, the implementation of strategies and the production of reports depend on these in order to enable a global assessment of the implementation of the framework. Chair, Côte d'Ivoire also suggests capacity building on the use of online registration tools, both for NBSAPs and for progress reports. Côte d'Ivoire also takes note of the regional and sub-regional dialogues on national biodiversity strategies and action plans, which have already been held, while encouraging you to continue this process of exchanges with implementation stakeholders. However, we note that increased awareness raising at the national level and capacity building of parties, as well as technical support, would be required for this. Côte d'Ivoire supports the draft recommendation and proposes that in points 2 and 3, we start with invite rather than encourage. Thank you.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. Next in line are Kenya, Republic of Moldova, Peru. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya, like other African nations, aligns with the statement made by Ethiopia on behalf of Africa. The importance of parties to align the NBSAP with the KMGBF cannot be overemphasized in this setting. For this reason, Kenya has made great strides in developing the National Biodiversity Strategy targets that are awaiting validation, and we are on course in aligning them with the NBSAP. We wish to acknowledge with appreciation the partners who have provided financial and technical assistance to support the updating of the national targets and alignment of the NBSAP to KMGBF. In specific, the Global Environment Facility for the financial support, and to UNEP for the programmatic and technical support through the Global Biodiversity Framework Area Action Support Program. With this support, Kenya is on course to deliver updated national targets and revised NBSAP, proposedly by COP16. We are hoping that subsequent funding streams for this process are availed and accessible on time. Kenya joins parties that have acknowledged the challenges encountered in using the reporting and other guidelines and the need for technical capacity enhancement to parties that need it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. Republic of Moldova, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moldova making considerable efforts to implement the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework post-2020 and its 23 global biodiversity targets at national level. It is an important task for us to develop national targets in line with the GBF and to meeting the ambitious global biodiversity goals up to 2030. The Ministry of Environment has established a multi-sectorial expert group for developing the concept note and the updated NBSAP 2030. As being a country with economies in transition, Moldova has benefited from the generous support of the global UNEP-GEF GBF Early Action Support Project, for which we are very grateful. I would like to extend our appreciations to the UNEP and its team for an excellent collaboration and consultation, making possible to efficient assessment and revision of the previous NBSAP and provide necessary analytical work to update the NBSAP. At present, Moldova has finished the preparation of the draft NBSAP 2030, and now we are in the process of public consultation with main relevant sectors and stakeholders. We are now in the process of development of the monitoring and evaluation mechanism for the updated NBSAP, as well as the mechanism of resource mobilization for its implementation, including available local, external financial resources and GBF fund. We are highly appreciated the efforts of the UNEP and the CBD in collaboration with WCMC for conducting a number of very useful webinars, side events, and regional CE meeting in Istanbul, as well as bilateral consultation to guiding us in the way of preparation of the updated NBSAP and sharing with us the best practices. We would shortly upload our updated draft NBSAP to the DART platform as it is a very useful and helpful one to making accessible national deliverables to the CBD and the multilateral environmental agreement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Republic of Moldova. Next in line are Peru, Democratic Republic of Congo, Pakistan, Costa Rica, Oman. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We've been working with particular attention on the prioritization and the adoption of the targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as we have worked as well on our national plan and strategy with full participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities and various other stakeholders, companies, guilds, academia, youth and women, amongst others. And through the National Commission for Biological Diversity, known as CONADIB, we have identified a series of actions which have been contributing to the implementation of the KMGBF up to 2030. And at the same time, we carried out a general analysis of the framework and its 23 targets, amongst which we have, in a preliminary matter, come to identify 9 of the 23 and the guidelines for their implementation with the support of some international cooperators. Those are targets 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 12, 13, 18, and 19. And this is a preliminary decision and does not preclude us from prioritizing other targets and cross-cutting approaches which are required for the implementation of the KMGBF. We note that the importance of the multidimensional approach relating to planning, supervision, notification, and revision. And it's important that these elements in the mentioned approach for the strategies and the national action plans in terms of biodiversity should be done so that we can evaluate through the standard format, since we already have the NBSAPs, and that's the principal instrument for the implementation of the KMGBF, so that we can evaluate its contribution and inform COP16. But it's important that, and of concern, that no one has used the template that was provided in that communication, which is in Annex 1 of Decision 15.6. Peru, in June of this year, will be the headquarters for the regional dialogues for the NBSAPs for Latin America, and we will show our interest in having as many countries in the region who will be received with all the warmth possible. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Peru. Democratic Republic of Congo. You have the floor, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. The Democratic Republic of the Congo aligns itself with the statement made by Ethiopia on behalf of Africa. The Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to emphasize the following points. Parties which are currently revising their NBSAPs and their national targets should plan to include transformative action as required to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. They should also set out ambitious measures for all direct and indirect drivers of the impoverishment of biodiversity. We need to deliberately and systematically ensure the inclusion of all stakeholders, in particular, involving non-state actors, especially indigenous peoples and local communities, women, youth, and the private sector, in the process to review and update the NBSAPs and to set national targets, followed by the implementation of those. NBSAPs, as reviewed, should reflect a pan-governmental and pan-societal approach and enable the full and effective participation of all stakeholders at the national level. To achieve this, the financial means necessary, technical and scientific cooperation, and the sharing of knowledge and technology transfer as appropriate remain essential, and this is all required as soon as possible. To conclude, the Democratic Republic of the Congo would also like to flag that it has made sufficient progress in the process to update its NBSAPs and is striving to meet any remaining challenges in order to be able to submit its NBSAPs updated prior to COP16, and if not, its updated national targets. On Article 8J, the Democratic Republic of the Congo will take part in the planned informal dialogue in order to ensure that indigenous peoples and local communities remain indivisible and inseparable for an inclusive implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the Convention on Biological Diversity. Our detailed comments on this document have been sent to the Secretariat in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Democratic Republic of Congo. Next, Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Pakistan thanks the Secretariat of Convention on Biological Diversity and the Government of Japan for hosting the dialogue on national biodiversity strategies and action plans for South and Southeast Asia in late January in Tokyo. In this meeting, the participants discussed the issues related to realigning the NBSAPs under JEF Early Action Support Program. And one of the main challenges that came up in that meeting was a delay on part of the implementing agencies. Pakistan feels that the implementing agency should follow the whole of government and whole of society approach as envisaged by the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We would also suggest that implementing agency should follow the recommendations made in document SBI 4/2, especially paragraph 18F, which I'll read, that for countries that receive global environmental facility funds for revising or updating national biodiversity strategies and action plans, strong coordination between the implementing agency and the national focal points for the Convention on Biological Diversity is the foundation for project implementation and increasing the ownership of the process by countries. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pakistan. Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Costa Rica se...
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, we are pleased to note that from the updating of the biodiversity strategy with funds from GEF, we've been able to carry out our current strategy with the instrument of planning with strategic relevance. And our national strategy has not been evaluated before, and this exercise represents an opportunity for it to be improved. This evaluation uses the evaluation guide to connect the national priorities with the SDGs of the International Institute of the Environment, which gives us an opportunity to analyze the specific support provided by NB2 to what's been worked on in the terms of biodiversity since its contribution of the SDGs and the principles of 2030 agenda. And we have worked on efficiency and sustainability. And following this, the results of this analysis of the alignment between the targets of the NB2 and 8 international conventions identified the fact that our strategy has high correlation with the majority of the cases. The targets of our strategy show an alignment that's very high with 6 strategic frameworks which are related to biodiversity, including Agenda 2030 and climate change, desertification, and the Convention 169. And this contributes to the identification of any lacks that we have been able to note, and allows us to direct our updating of this strategy towards these themes with the major effort required. In relation to document SB 142, Costa Rica supports the establishment of an open-ended forum. However, we believe that this could be revised into fusing it with a consultative committee for the global revision of collective progress made in the implementation of the KMGBF, and would therefore simplify a process which is so delayed at national level, which is that of the actualization or updating of strategies. Thank you. Thank you for the preparation of these documents, CBD, CBI, SBI 4.2. Mr. Chairman, the Sultanate of Oman, which is conscious of the importance of revising and modernizing the NBSAPs for a close collaboration and to create a parallel with the international framework, the Kunming-Montreal GBF, we would like to highlight the national targets through the implementation of many working sessions, including all stakeholders, and in that context, and to respond to our commitments, the Sultanate of Oman would like to urge the Secretariat to provide assistance to the Sultanate of Oman with regard to technical cooperation in order to assist us with our NBSAPs in accordance with the timeline specified. Thank you.
Thank you, Oman. Liberia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. Liberia is in line with a statement made by Ethiopia on behalf of Africa. Mr. Chair, Liberia hosts the largest of the remaining Upper Guinea forests in humid West Africa, responsible for climate stability in the region. Mr. Chair, just go without saying, this places a lot of responsibility on Liberia in protecting this great asset. Regarding the revision of the NBSAP, we can report that we have made significant progress on the revision process. We are pleased to report that we have completed our national targets and indicator and on schedule to complete a revision of the NBSAP in the last quarter of 2024. Liberia would therefore like to express a sincere appreciation to GF and UNEP for providing the needed funding, programmatic and technical support through the inherent activity program in implementing the KMGBF. Additionally, we would like to recognize the HUE program and advocacy-related effort being undertaken by the Hard Ambition Coalition, which has resulted into the regional approach to the implementation of Target 3, commonly known as 30 by 30, in the West African South region, which Liberia is a beneficiary. Liberia further like to note that while completion of the NBSAP revision process is very good, it is also important for the availability of the means of implementation to be certain and delivered in time. I thank you.
Thank you, Liberia. Next in line are Cook Islands, Egypt, Suriname, Philippines. Cook Islands. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Cook Island welcomes the document on the NBSAP review of the implementation. We acknowledge the Secretariat for organizing regional and sub-regional dialogues on NBSAP and appreciate supporting parties and organizations for the financial support in making the regional and sub-regional meetings possible. The 14 Pacific Island countries recently met in Fiji and had the opportunity to share experiences, processes and approaches and challenges in revising and updating NBSAP to align to the GBF targets. The Cook Islands appreciates the GBF Early Action Support Program, providing financial and technical support to fast-track actions to implement the GBF goals and target by reviewing and aligning our national targets and NBSAPs to the Global Biodiversity Framework, and would appreciate receiving the support earlier after the adoption of the Global Financial Biodiversity Framework. We note the importance of the whole of government, whole of society approach when reviewing NBSAP, and given our islands are widely distributed within a 200 square kilometre of ocean, accessing these remote islands to contribute to the NBSAP is challenging for small islands such as ours with limited resources. On this note, the Cook Islands would appreciate further assistance and financial support to involve the whole of government, whole of society on our remote islands so they can share their experiences in biodiversity implementation and effectively contribute to the revision of the goals and targets of our NBSAP. The Cook Islands is progressing on the review of its NBSAP, taking the whole of government, whole of society approach, involving women and youth in revising and aligning its NBSAP to the GBF, and to submit this in a timely manner before COP16. We submit our amendments to the document in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cook Islands. Egypt, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Egypt supports statement given by Ethiopia on behalf of Africa, as well as many, many statements given by delegates from Africa on this very important issue. At the same time, we would like to support statement given by Syria and Indonesia on the issues of biodiversity, resources being deteriorating. At the same time, they have not received funding to prepare the NBSAP. Therefore, we urge whoever is interested to help those countries in our region to provide assistance before it is too late. Mr. Chair, as all of us we know, biodiversity NBSAP is a tool for implementation of global biodiversity framework if we do it rightly. So Egypt, like many other countries, they have joined all of the other activities in the region, including the regional dialogue on biodiversity, and as well as online reporting tools for capacity building and many others. And that's why we try to implement the whole society approach, which takes a lot of time, not only to educate those people, especially local communities, and involve them and engage them in all of our work in a way that they feel that they own the NBSAP. They are the owner for implementing biodiversity in NBSAP. Mr. Chair, based on that, we have made quite progress in a way that we have almost now about to finish our national targets to be in accordance with global biodiversity framework. And I'm sure that the successful Substar last week and SBI for this week, inshallah, they will be used in a way that we can progress to develop our MBSAP very quickly. I mean, we will go straight for a major national workshop telling them what happened in Nairobi. At the same time, we enhance and promote finishing the MBSAP in proper time before COP 16 to be able to be reviewed according to what we have agreed upon. I have to admit that there are many other initiatives that have been useful with us, like Biofin initiative, for example. We were able to look at the financing mechanism in a way that now we are in a situation we are preparing our biodiversity finance plan to be complemented with the rest of the MBSAP. So we are very hopeful that we will submit our MBSAP very, very soon to CBD. Thank you, Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Egypt. Next in line are Suriname, Philippines. Suriname, you have the floor, please.
Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, thank you for the opportunity to address this SBI Forum meeting. I am pleased to inform you that Suriname has successfully updated its National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan for the period 2024 to 2030. This document has been meticulously developed in accordance with the UN CBD Conference of Parties Decision 15/6, which requests parties to revise and update their NBSAPs in alignment with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and its goals and targets ahead of the 16th Conference of Parties. This updated NBSAP will be presented at a high-level meeting with the President of Suriname and all relevant stakeholders next month and will be adopted in the policies of all the stakeholders. After this presentation, the updated version will be submitted to the CBD for approval before COP16. By undertaking this comprehensive update, Suriname reaffirms its commitment to the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity and all its articles. The updated NBSAP is structured around 4 strategic pathways and encompasses 20 national targets in alignment with Article 9 of this Decision 15/6. Suriname is dedicated to adopting this updated NBSAP as a policy instrument and to integrating its elements into subsequent national development plans. The targets within this framework are aimed to be achieved by the conclusion of the updated NBSAP period. The actions delineated in this NBSAP are particularly focused on the initial phase from 2024 to 2030, setting the stage for sustained biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. Suriname stands ready to collaborate with all parties in our collective effort to safeguard global biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Suriname. Next in line are Philippines, Lesotho, South Africa, Lebanon. Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Philippines appreciates the sub-regional dialogues organized by the CBD Secretariat with the support of the Asian Center for Biodiversity in August 2023 in Manila. We also thank the CBD Secretariat for the summary of key findings from regional and sub-regional dialogues on NBSAPs as contained in document SBI/4/INF/6. The Philippines intends to complete its NBSAP updating for submission to the 16th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. We have taken a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach in updating our NBSAP, including updating of national targets aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework. The Philippines has ensured the effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities, women, and youth in our NBSAP updating process, which went through a series of local and sectoral consultation workshops. The Philippines also appreciates the support provided by the Global Environmental Facility through the UNDP in the revision and updating of the Philippine NBSAP. This, together with funding support provided by other international and local partners, allowed the Philippines to move forward with updating of our NBSAP. The Philippines supports the draft decision as it is important for all parties to submit the revised and updated national biodiversity strategies and action plans aligned with the GBF for timely submission to COP16 in Colombia to halt and reverse nature loss by 2030. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Next in line are Lesotho, South Africa, Lebanon, Turkey. Lesotho, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Lesotho supports the intervention made by Ethiopia on behalf of Africa. Lesotho wishes to commend the partners for the financial support for the review and updating of NBSAPs. We wish to congratulate the countries which have already submitted their revised and updated national biodiversity strategies and action plans. Mr. Chair, Lesotho has made a significant progress regarding the review and updating of NBSAP, with few months remaining before COP16. Lesotho remains committed to finalize its national biodiversity strategy and action plan, ensuring its alignment to the GBF targets and taking into consideration the importance of a whole of government and whole of society approach. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lesotho. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. South Africa aligns with the statement by Ethiopia on behalf of the Africa Group. Further, we note the summary of progress in updating NBSAPs and setting national targets. The fact that only 8 parties have thus far submitted their revised and updated NBSAPs, and that there have been no standalone submissions by parties of national targets, is a clear testimony of challenges encountered by parties, particularly developing countries, in these processes. Developing countries rely entirely on the availability of funding to undertake these processes, and hence, the 8 countries that have submitted their revised and updated NBSAPs are predominantly developed countries. The regional and sub-regional dialogues on NBSAPs that have been convened thus far have highlighted some of these challenges, including those related to undertaking consultations with relevant government ministries and internal approval processes, sectors and stakeholders, and analyzing current biodiversity status and trends, as well as implementation challenges and challenges in developing some of the tools required to facilitate implementation. There is therefore need for capacity support, particularly around issues related to monitoring and the importance of developing a national biodiversity financing plan. The revision and update of NBSAPs, as well as the setting of national targets, require extensive engagement with a broad range of stakeholders for a whole of government and whole of society approach. South Africa's NBSAP was revised and updated in 2015 for the period 2015 to 2025 in alignment with the Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011 to 2020. The rapid assessment of the current NBSAP with a view to determine achievements, challenges, gaps, and lessons learned from its implementation has been initiated. This will be followed by the revision of this NBSAP aligned to the Kunming-Montreal GBF and South Africa's white paper on conservation and sustainable use of biological resources, which was adopted by Cabinet last year. So the revision will be initiated in 2025. Mr. Chair, by COP16, South Africa will make an effort to submit its national target aligned to the targets of the GBF, and a whole of government and whole of society consultative process to develop national targets is currently underway. We express gratitude for early action support, and further that we hosted the Africa Group of Negotiators in Cape Town in April with the support of the African Union in preparation for Substar 26 and SBI4. And we also appreciate the support of our Southern African region in finalizing the Southern African biodiversity strategy, which is aligned to the GBF. Further input will be submitted in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, South Africa. Lebanon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We thank the CBD Secretariat for the good preparation of the meeting documents and the note presented in document CBD/SBI/4/2 related to the review of implementation with regard to the assessment of progress in preparation of revised and updated national biodiversity strategies and action plans. And we support the recommendation presented in this document. We would like also to thank the Secretariat for organizing a regional dialogue for West Asia last January to support countries technically in this process. Lebanon has in place a new biodiversity strategy and action plan since 2016, and we have started in October 2023 the review and update of our NBSAP through the Early Action Support Project for Global Biodiversity Framework, funded by the Global Environment Facility and implemented by UNDP. And we seize the opportunity in this meeting to express our appreciation to the support provided by the GEF to facilitate the revision and updating of our national biodiversity strategy and action plan. Through this project, we already started the process of alignment of our national targets set in our current NBSAP with the global targets of the GBF. And hopefully we will have our updated national targets set and submitted to the CBD before the COP16 in October, despite all the challenges that we are facing currently in Lebanon at various levels. We have started also through this project the assessment of the national biodiversity systems and the development of a national monitoring action plan for our new updated NBSAP. Furthermore, we started as well within this project the review and alignment of Lebanon's existing national policies related to biodiversity to assess their coherence with the GBF. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lebanon. We have these following parties lined up: Turkey, Tonga, Chile, Vanuatu. Turkey, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Following the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework at COP15, we now turn our attention to revising our national biodiversity strategy and action plans. These revisions are essential for effectively applying the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and achieving its ambitious targets. Turkey has embarked on aligning the targets within its NBSAP and with those of the Kunming-Montreal GBF. This comparative analysis has shown significant overlap between the current NBSAP targets and Kunming-Montreal GBF. Yet it has also highlighted areas requiring further development. To advance these objectives, we are pleased that Turkey hosted a regional inception and technical support workshop as part of the GEF-supported Early Action Support Project in Istanbul in May 2023. This workshop served as a platform for regional cooperation, knowledge exchange, and capacity building, fostering collaborative efforts to meet the Kunming-Montreal GBF targets. We are optimistic that the SBI4 meeting will significantly advance the implementation tools necessary for countries to effectively execute their strategies. By fostering collaboration and sharing best practices, this meeting can play a vital role in enhancing the capacity of nations to achieve their goals and address global challenges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Turkey. Tonga, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to align my statement with that made by Fiji and Cook Islands. As mentioned, the 14 Pacific Island countries convened in March to review the country NBSEPs. This review meeting reiterated the need to strengthen support for the development of a core set of national indicators, national data collection, and statistical analysis in accordance with national priorities for the updating of NBSEPs, amongst others. Chair, whilst progress has been made to build synergies and strengthen cooperation and collaboration among the biodiversity MEAs, other Rio conventions, and international frameworks, Tonga's current NBSEP has depicted how its national strategies and actions addresses or contributes to the implementation of the said MEAs and international and regional frameworks, and will continue to do so. This would strengthen data sharing, data repository for statistical analysis within Tonga, and mobilize resources from other donor and development partners outside the CBD GEF to fund implementation of NBSEP actions. We acknowledge the many challenges and limitations we face, along with our fellow Pacific SIDS, and we would appreciate financial support and capacity building for remote islands, which will support the whole government, whole society approach in revising and implementing the NBSEP, and for the development of core set of national indicators for climate change, biodiversity, waste management and pollution, and environmental governance, as these indicators will support systematic environmental tracking to improve database decision-making in the environmental sector, and for the revision and updating of NBSEPs, the National State of Environment reports, which can be used to assist reporting to the CBD, as well as the various conventions, and to guide our regional partners. Chair, Tonga urges parties to expedite the process of revising or updating their NBSEPs as requested by COP Decision 15/6, including national targets in alignment with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We also appreciate financial resources and capacity building for PSIDS to include remote islands for a whole government, whole society approach to revising, updating NBSEPs, and appreciate financial support for the development of a core set of national indicators for climate change, biodiversity, waste management and pollution, and environmental governance. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tonga. Next in line are Chile, Vanuatu, Mongolia, Armenia. Chile, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, it's an honor to speak at this meeting of utmost importance of the subsidiary body on implementation of the CBD. I'd like to start by expressing our commitment to setting out our national targets and goals in line with the Global Biodiversity Framework. Decision 15/6 from the 15th party of the COP of CBD, and looking forward to the next COP to be held in Cali, Colombia. In Chile, we focused on integrating biodiversity into decision-making, including visions of the various actors within our territory, striving to find synergies with other international bodies and national regulatory bodies in terms of biodiversity and pollution in order to effectively and comprehensively address the triple planetary crisis. Therefore, we thank the Secretariat for setting out regional and sub-regional dialogues on MBSAPs, because these have helped to share experiences, identify main challenges and opportunities for the implementation of the global biodiversity framework in the region. We would like to also express our support to the draft recommendation set out in document SBI/4/2, mixes on planning, reporting and review, without prejudice to the fact that we will request more clarity on the incorporation of results of the open-ended forum for implementation of strategies and action plans in the countries, because any type of revision needs to be focused on providing assistance in order to meet challenges in implementing MBSAPs in a constructive manner. Finally, we hope that this SBI session will be very productive and will lay out significant foundations so that we can pass on robust recommendations for the next COP to be held in Colombia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chile. Vanuatu, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the government of Vanuatu. First, I would like to express our gratitude to the government and people of Kenya for their warm welcome and hospitality. Vanuatu congratulates the countries that have successfully submitted their NBSAPs. We also acknowledge the GEF for providing financial support for the review and update of our NBSAP. The Vanuatu National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan 2018 to 2030 were developed to align with the Vanuatu National Sustainable Development Plan, NSDP, a localized version of the UN SDGs. As we approach the COP16, Vanuatu is making significant progress towards finalizing the NBSAP review. This includes aligning the NBSAP with the KMGBF, setting national targets and conducting stakeholder and community consultations. In the coming months, Vanuatu will complete provincial and community consultations, review national targets, and all a validation workshop. The national target will then be presented to stakeholders before undergoing formal ministerial endorsement. We anticipate submitting our reviewed NBSAP using the standard template by July 2024. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vanuatu. Mongolia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Mongolia is steadfast in its commitment to preserving its rich biodiversity through the implementation in national biodiversity strategies and action plans. The NBSAP cycle, which is crucial for our biodiversity conservation efforts, it's meticulously aligned with the guidelines set forth by the CBD and IPBs. Firstly, Mongolia is applying the NBSAP cycle in alignment with the Global Biodiversity Framework targets. We are developing country-specific assessment based on IPB's global and Asia-Pacific evaluations, and screening this against the 8 transition outlined in the Global Biodiversity Outlook 5th towards 2050. In March 24th, the Ministry of Environment and Tourism issued a decree to establish the National Committee responsible to overseeing the national implementation of the CBD-Live. This committee will ensure the true and effective application of our biodiversity targets. Furthermore, the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, in collaboration with the United Nations Development Programme, is ensuring that our NBSAP agenda setting and design exercises are both country-driven and inclusive. We are committed to submit our updated NBSAP to the CBD before COP16. Mongolia also preparing to celebrate International Biodiversity Day with full governmental participation. Please refer to the provided agenda for detailed activities planned for this day. Moreover, Mongolia is advocating for an Asia-Pacific regional call before the next COP to discuss the theme of NBSAP alignment and share the updated versions with regional countries. Our focus is on enhancing capacity building for NBSAP JVAP implementation, as well as the national capacity for the building program on biosafety protocol in conjunction with supplementary protocol and Nagoya protocol. Also, we thank you for the GBFA's early action support project. I appreciate for strong support by the UNEP, including guidance on Target 17, with a webinar for Asian countries. Monitoring and reporting are integral components of our NBSAP cycle, enabling us to track progress, identify challenges, and make necessary adjustments. Regular reporting to the CBD Secretariat ensures transparency and accountability, and underscoring Mongolia's commitment to global biodiversity goals. In conclusion, Mongolia's delayed application of the NBSAP cycle in alignment with CBD and IPB's guidelines demonstrates an unwavering dedication to biodiversity conservation. This alignment not only strengthens our national efforts, but also contributes significantly to achieving the GBF targets for future generations. I thank you.
Thank you, Mongolia. Armenia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Armenia, thanks for this kind of opportunity and also for this kind of support. I would like to briefly comment on the work being done to develop the biodiversity strategy. The latest strategy in Republic of Armenia for 2016 to 22 and a national action plan was developed and approved on December 2015, which was in line with the Aichi goals. Considering that the global biodiversity strategy from 2020 was under development, Armenia was actively involved in this process and participated in all meetings and working discussions. Also in December 2022, Armenia participated in the Conference of the Parties, within which the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework was approved. From now on, it is committed to develop a national strategy in line with the new global strategy. Appropriate financial support from the Global Ecological Fund we provided to implement this task and action plan of the Republic of Armenia, which is currently under development within the framework of this funding. The draft document is expected to be developed by October 2024. Armenia emphasizing the conservation of biodiversity and the three targets defined in Kunming-Montreal Global Framework for Biodiversity has also joined other initiatives, particularly Target 3 or the 30 by 30 target of CBD. Currently, we are conducting discussions on the technical task of developing a biodiversity strategic document, by which we must clearly formulate the main goals and scope of our planned works, based on which the project version of the strategic document will be presented. Armenia appreciates the hard work undertaken and thanks for the financial and technical support. Thank you.
Thank you, Armenia. Iraq has requested for the floor, but name is disappeared from the screen. If Iraq wants to come in, we welcome it.
نعم شكرا جزيلا حضرة الرئيس. شكرا جزيلا حضرة الرئيس.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the floor. First of all, I'd like to inform you that Iraq has taken necessary steps to review its first MBSAPs for 2015-2020, as well as other strategies relating to the environment. This has been carried out in coordination at a large scale with governmental entities and representatives of civil society. We have received financial support from GEF thanks to a project submission by the government of Iraq in cooperation with UNEP. We're working to meet the goals of the Economy Montreal framework. We are at the point of setting out more ambitious targets for Iraq to better preserve biodiversity according to Iraqi priorities, while placing an emphasis on the status of progress of the implementation of these targets. As much as possible, and according to available capacities, we will establish a financing program in order to carry out new national targets. We will also strive to submit our reports before the next COP. I would like to add that the last phase of implementation of the targets will require further financial support. That's why I ask you to take that aspect into account. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, do any further parties wish to speak? Sweden. Sudan, you have the floor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أولا نؤكد سعادتنا.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, please allow us to thank the CBD and pay tribute to the global framework. We add our voice to that of Ethiopia, who spoke on behalf of the African group. We are currently setting out our national action plans and strategies on biodiversity, and we're on the verge of concluding our NBSAP. We would therefore like to thank the GEF for the support provided. We will strive to submit that NBSAP before the COP16. This despite the unstable situation seen in Sudan since last year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sudan. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Chair. At the outset, Saudi Arabia would like to thank the government of Kenya for hosting the fourth meeting of the subsidiary body on implementation. We'd also like to thank the Secretariat for organizing the meeting and preparing documentation. Saudi Arabia is committed to achieving the goals of the Convention on Biological Diversity and its protocols. To that effect, we have adopted measures and initiatives which are ambitious in order to preserve our natural environment and to ensure sustainability of our resources. We've also striven to expand protected areas in our country through the Green Saudi Arabia Initiative. We have also worked towards the preservation of threatened species. Saudi Arabia is currently updating its NBSAPs in order to align it with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We are also working on this alongside UNEP. Saudi Arabia would like to emphasize the importance of adopting urgent measures to halt biodiversity loss at the national level in order to strengthen biodiversity goals within all sectors of our government and the private sector. Working also with civil society organizations. To that effect, we have adopted national strategy rules, and we are now working to strengthen coordination mechanisms within all sectors. We asked Secretariat to set up capacity building workshops so that we can achieve all goals. Now on this agenda item, Saudi Arabia thinks it's important to really emphasize on the need for financing and available resources in order to support projects, in order to preserve biodiversity, and to really support all efforts being undertaken. We need to improve transparency so that we can achieve the desired results. To conclude, I would just like to note that Saudi Arabia is undertaking great efforts and working with international partners in order to achieve their goals, in order to ensure the protection of biodiversity and environment for present and future generations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. I see no more requests from the parties. So now I invite other governments if they want to take the floor. Okay. I'll move forward. I would now like to invite interventions from observer organizations. Given the nature of this item, I will first ask for any interventions on behalf of major stakeholder groups. IPLCs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity welcomes the report contained in CBD document SPI 4/3 on the implementation of the multi-year program of work supporting the implementation of Article 8J and other related provisions of the Convention. We emphasize that the vast majority of the tasks in the multi-year program of work on Article 8J have been completed or are under ongoing implementation. We also note that there are tasks that have yet to be initiated. It is our expectation that these tasks will become a part of the alignment processes during the implementation of the KMGBF, with the necessary technical and financial resources to support the process. Article 8J is an essential and pivotal article in the Convention. It provides for full and effective participation and engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, including the recognition of rights and the importance of traditional knowledge, customary sustainable use, and the application of various principles and protocols that promote our ongoing and equitable inclusion in the implementation activities and processes of the Convention. The Working Group on Article 8J has played a key role in the achievements that are evident in the report of the multi-year program of work. As such, we believe that the continuing and enhanced engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, will serve to strengthen and support the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework and the achievement of its goals and targets. We reiterate the importance as well to fulfill the rights to free, prior, and informed consent. The IFB also takes note of CBD document SPI 4/2 on the preparation of revised MBSAPs and the establishment of national targets in alignment with the Global Biodiversity Framework. We congratulate those parties who have engaged Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth in their strategic action plans, and encourage other parties to do likewise, including in the setting of national targets. The development of MBSAPs and targets at the national level are vital for the implementation of the framework. It is equally vital for the parties to engage Indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth in the development of the plans and targets that affect them at the national, subnational, and local levels. In operative recommendation number 2 of the document, where it reads, encourages parties to submit their revised and updated national biodiversity strategies and action plans, including national targets, comma, we would like to insert, taking into account Section C of the KMGBF and ensuring the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth in the NBSAP's revision process. We look forward to continuing the work of implementing Article 8J, the KMGBF, and the CBD as a whole. We thank the parties for their consideration and support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, IPLCs. Now, CBD Women's Caucus. You have the floor, please.
I am speaking on behalf of the CBD Women's Caucus. We recognize the immense work that has been carried out by everyone towards revising the NBSAPs in line with the KMGBF. while reiterating our collective commitment to ensuring that national target setting and updating of the NBSAPs are gender responsive. To enable that, we highlight the following priorities. We stress the need for participation and representation in decision-making that is full, equitable, inclusive, effective, and gender responsive, especially in the review processes of NBSAPs at the national and subnational levels. While indicators within the monitoring framework are under development and NBSAPs are being revised to reflect the KMGBF, we urge parties to incorporate gender-responsive indicators within their updated NBSAPs, especially for Target 23. We urge parties to ensure that the implementation of the Gender Plan of Action is considered when the review and target setting of NBSAPs are being carried out at regional, national, and subnational levels as per Decision 1511. For that, we suggest the following modification to the document CBD-SBI 4/2. In Part 3 of the recommendations, we would like to add 1 bis urges parties to apply the whole of government and whole of society approach to ensure that the concerns and priorities of different actors, including indigenous peoples, local communities, women, and youth, are addressed in accordance with guidance provided under Annex 1 of CBD COP Decision 15/6. We request the Chair to ask parties to support our considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, CBD Women's Caucus. Friends, certain amendments were proposed by IPLCs in the form of textual changes. We would like to know any party would like to support such proposal made by IPLCs. Any party? Raise your hands. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, coming to CBD Women's Caucus, they also suggested certain amendments. Any party would like to support it, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Youth, you have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Since the adoption of the KBGMF has carried out its efforts to strengthen this and to have consultations and to raise awareness and the participation in CBD negotiations to push towards a just, implementable and impactful biodiversity plan, recognizing the need to bring global gains to the national and local levels alongside on-ground actions. Many national chapters of our network have also set out to participate in and support their countries' NBSAP updating process. Chapters of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network from countries such as Kenya, Austria, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Morocco, Philippines, Ghana, Democratic Republic of Congo, Burkina Faso, and others have been invited to their countries' consultations and were able to provide their perspectives in a significant manner. We express our appreciation to these countries for their efforts and encourage all parties to do so in further processes. Furthermore, we call on parties to share information on these processes in a timely manner and allocate financial resources to facilitate the informed and meaningful participation of youth in these consultations. We appreciate several parties' interventions during this plenary, committing themselves to the inclusion of Indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth in their processes. To the draft recommendation, we propose to add the following paragraph after paragraph 3, further encourages parties to enable the full, equitable, inclusive, effective, and gender-responsive representation and participation of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women, youth, and persons with disabilities as they continue the process to revise and update their national biodiversity strategies and action plans. We call on parties to support this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, GYBN. Thank you, youth. Next, the CBD Alliance. You have the floor, please.
NGOs. No, it's NGOs at mic 236.
Yeah, next, NGOs at microphone number 236.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, for allowing me to briefly address this meeting on behalf of the CBD Alliance. We share the concerns mentioned in document SBI 4/2 about national biodiversity strategies and action plans that are not aligned with the strategic plans of the CBD. Proper alignment requires, first and foremost, that not only all policies and activities, but also all financial flows are aligned with the GBF. It is simply unacceptable that banks and other private institutions continue to invest annually more than $5 trillion in sectors and projects that harm biodiversity, and that parties themselves continue to provide $1.7 trillion in harmful subsidies and other perverse incentives. To mention just one example, European countries spent more than €15 billion on subsidies for bioenergy production last year, despite a rapidly growing body of scientific evidence that bioenergy production is not only a key cause of deforestation and forest degradation in both Europe itself and forests in other continents, but also emits more greenhouse gases per unit of energy produced than even coal. With the deadline for identifying and phasing out the most harmful incentives approaching very fast, it is essential that updated NBSAPs include concrete commitments to redirect such perverse incentives towards gender-just, socially actable, real solutions for the biodiversity and climate crisis. Similarly, concrete commitments should be included to set up the necessary regulatory frameworks that ensure private finance no longer forms the main driver of biodiversity loss. And in line with the CBD and the GBF, we need concrete, quantified, binding targets for providing new and additional public financial support to developing countries to be included in NBSAPs. We thus call on parties to include the following text suggestion in their draft recommendation. Calls on parties to include strong regulatory frameworks and quantified binding commitments, including in the field of mobilizing resources and redirecting perverse incentives, in their updated national biodiversity strategies and action plans, so as to align all policies and financial flows with the global biodiversity framework. We would welcome party support for this text proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, CBD Alliance. Colleagues, some changes, amendments suggested by youth, that is Global Youth Biodiversity Network. If there is any support for any party, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thank you. Delegates, some changes are also suggested by CBD Alliance. If anybody supports such changes, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thank you. I now invite interventions by individual observer organizations. Please, statements should not exceed 2 minutes. Now, the floor, you have the floor. OHCHR is given floor, please. OHCHR.
Thank you, Chair. Currently, the draft SBI recommendation included in document SBI/4/2 concerning the review of implementation fails to mention Section C, including a human rights-based approach. It is essential that it does so. Section C of the KMGBF guides the implementation of the entire KMGBF and sets out that the KMGBF's implementation should follow a human rights-based approach. Importantly, respecting, protecting, and fulfilling human rights, including in the context of biodiversity action, is an obligation under international law. Moreover, rights-based biodiversity action allows to address biodiversity loss without contributing to existing inequalities or exacerbating vulnerabilities. On the contrary, it leads to better outcomes for both people and nature, as has been confirmed by the best assessment report on the diverse values and valuation of nature. To facilitate states' efforts in following a human rights-based approach to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and the equitable sharing of its benefits, the UN Environment Management Group published guidance on integrating human rights in national biodiversity strategy and action plans, updated following a peer review facilitated by the CBD Executive Secretary. In this context, OHCHR proposes 2 additional preambular paragraphs 6 and 7, reading, quote, recalling that the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is to be implemented consistent with its Section C, following a human rights-based approach. That was part 1. Part 2, taking note of the United Nations Environment Management Group's guidance on integrating human rights in national biodiversity strategy and action plans, updated following a peer review facilitated by the Executive Secretary, unquote. We would be grateful for parties' support. Thank you.
Thank you, OHCHR. Now, I would like to elicit any party would like to support the proposals made, changes suggested by OHCHR.
Bangladesh. So say Bangladesh.
Yeah, Bangladesh, Benin, Bangladesh. Thank you. UNDP, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. United Nations Development Programme commend the national progress that parties are making to rapidly strengthen the underlying policy mechanism needed to achieve the commitments of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We also applaud the early and synergistic action being taken by parties to align national biodiversity targets to the GBF in advance of CBD COP16. Nature underpins our life, well-being, and our society and economy. So this makes aligning national policy, including NDCs, with the ambitious goals and targets of the GBF highly complex, requiring, as many parties alluded to, a whole of society and whole of government approach. And undertaking science-based, high-quality, inclusive NBSAP approaches simultaneously requires time and mobilization of labor, resources, skills, and knowledge. So in support of country efforts, UNDP is committed to ensure seamless transition from the GF7 early action support to GF8 project support. and partnering with you, the parties, to better ensure the execution of an impactful and country-driven project is our top priority. Finally, we recognize the invaluable support of the GEF and its donor countries for facilitating early action on the biodiversity plan and for updating NBSAP's national reports and development of national biodiversity finance plans. Learning from these first 2 years of early action support implementation, we look forward to working with parties, CBD Secretariat, UNEP, and GEF to support national pathways towards NBSAP alignment and implementation prior to COP16 and beyond. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UNDP. FAO, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paragraph 15 of document CBD/SBI/4/2 states that the regional and sub-regional dialogues on national biodiversity strategies and action plans have benefited from the technical support of UN entities, including FAO. This NBSAP dialogue was supported by FAO in the Pacific and the Caribbean to promote the active participation of the agricultural sectors. Support will also be provided to the NBSAP dialogue for the African region that will convene from 30 May to 2nd of June. Furthermore, FAO has and continues to provide technical support directly to its member and to parties of the CBD for setting national targets and the review and updating of NBSAPs. FAO supported the development of the African Union Biodiversity Strategy. FAO is providing technical support specifically in African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries through the ACP-MIAS program. Recipient countries are supported in national target setting and/or NBSAP review and updating. Support was also provided to finalize a review and update of the Regional Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan of the Southern African Development Community and of the East African Community. At global level, FAO has created a biodiversity knowledge hub to support countries and facilitate access to knowledge on biodiversity for food and agriculture. The hub includes over 350 policy and technical tools. FAO remains committed to support its members and by extension the party to the CBD to finalize the revision and updating of the NBSAPs in time for submission before COP16 with particular attention to targets of the GBF related to agri-food system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, FAO. IUCN, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. The adoption of the Biodiversity Plan gave the world a unified agenda to tackle the loss of biodiversity. As Switzerland, Cuba, and others before us, IUCN highlights the urgency of action. The clock is ticking and time for implementation is now. Chair, SBI4 is an opportunity to take the pulse on our progress in meeting the ambitious plan, adjust gears, and continue in the right direction. Updating NBSAPs and aligning national targets to the global targets and goals of the GBF are crucial steps in this process. IUCN commends the 9 parties that have submitted their revised NBSAPs. Recognizing specific national circumstances and capacities, we urge all parties to complete their NBSAPs revision by COP16 to allow for a more comprehensive global analysis and review of progress. However, we need to streamline and simplify the existing support mechanisms and initiatives. IUCN encourages parties to make use of the template adopted in Decision 15/6 to facilitate the mapping of national targets against global targets and other components of the GBF. 2 elements are critical for effective NBSAPs. 1, their development must rely on a participatory process engaging all relevant stakeholders and right holders. And 2, the adoption of MBSAPs as policy instruments to enable proper mainstreaming of biodiversity into economic development, other sectors, and plans. Finally, Chair, let me highlight that IUCN's program and knowledge products contribute to the implementation of the GBF, and we stand ready to continue to support parties in these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, IUCN. Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair, distinguished delegates. Wetlands, including inland, marine and coastal, and human-made wetlands, are critical for the achievement of the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Because of their biodiversity, because of their role in the planet's hydrological and climate systems, and their exceptional contributions to people. Noting the work by parties in updating their national biodiversity strategies and action plans is ongoing, I'm pleased to inform you that the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands last week published a guide on upscaling wetland conservation, restoration and wise use through NBSAPs. This guide was prepared by the Scientific and Technical Review Panel of the Convention on Wetlands with support from the Convention's international organization partners, and it is available online on the Convention's website. I encourage parties to the CBD to use this guide as appropriate in further work on developing their MBSAPs, including national target setting, noting in particular that this promotes synergies and planning across biodiversity-related conventions in line with the guidance adopted in CBD Decision 15.6, and it addresses a number of the issues identified through regional and sub-regional dialogues as presented in Working Document 2 and Information Document 6 before this meeting. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, the business organizations at microphone number 253. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am making this statement on behalf of the Business for Nature Coalition. We would like to emphasize our strong support for the preparation of updated MBSAPs aligned with the GBF in time for COP16. We strongly welcome how the GBF recognizes the role of non-state actors, including businesses and financial institutions, in delivering the Convention's objectives. Indeed, voluntary actions by business will not be enough, and government should use NBSAPs to request action, define a roadmap, and provide ambition and regulatory certainty to get more action. The lack of mainstreaming was one of the reasons for the failure of the Aichi targets. We call on parties to explicitly recognize the importance of the participation of business and finance actors in NBSAPs, along other non-state actors, and to outline their expected roles and responsibilities in the implementation of key targets. This could take the form of a business action plan, which could be a standalone document, or a cross-cutting topic as part of the NBSAP. What is important is a set of strategies and actions expected from businesses, an overview of anticipated policies or regulations that would impact them, and indicators that can help track progress. This has or is currently being done by Japan, Malaysia, or Colombia, for example. In this regard, we would like to suggest the addition of the following sentence in the draft recommendation in document SBI/4/2. Encourages parties to reflect the whole of society approach in NBSAPs by outlining, as appropriate, the respective roles and responsibilities of all non-state actors in supporting the implementation of the GBF. We stand ready to support governments in this process and have developed recommendations available on our website. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I invite if any party wants to support the amendments suggested by business organization, please raise your hands. Yeah, I don't see any. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have now reached the conclusion of our discussions on agenda item 2. I would like to thank everyone for sharing their experiences in updating NBSAPs and in implementing Article 8J. On the basis of the discussion today, I will prepare a conference room paper with the help of the Secretariat. Friends, we will now consider agenda item 3, mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting and review. I would like to ask the Secretariat to introduce the documents for this item. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. For this item, the Secretariat has prepared the following documents: CBD/SBI/4/4 Mechanisms for Planning, Monitoring, Review, and Reporting. There's an Addendum 1 to this document, Modus Operandi for the Open-Ended Forum for Voluntary Country Review. Addendum 2, which is procedures for the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In the first document, it has been prepared in follow-up to Decision 15.6 of the Conference of the Parties, addressing a number of aspects of mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, which required further work. The document includes a recommendation and a number of annexes to the work. These include Annex 1 on updated national reporting, Annex 2 on reporting of commitments by non-state actors, Annex 3, which is a terms of reference for the Advisory Committee for the Global Review of Collective Progress towards the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat, for the introduction. As you have heard, we have a chapeau document with 2 addendums with the recommendation included in the chapeau. I invite all of you to be concise as possible in your interventions. I would also like to remind parties that the scientific and technical inputs for the global review have been negotiated in Substar 25, and I'll be including their findings in developing the CRP. Since the content in Substar recommendation 25/2 already underwent negotiation, I would like to invite parties to focus on recommendation which is contained in document CBD/SBI/4/4. I will now invite interventions from the floor. I encourage all interventions to be focused on concrete suggestions on the draft recommendation. I encourage parties speaking on behalf of regional groups to request the floor as soon as possible. Statements by parties on behalf of regional groups may be up to 5 minutes. Statements by individual parties will be limited to 3 minutes. Friends, now I will open the floor for statements from the parties. The following parties are in line, please. Colombia, Morocco, Switzerland, United Kingdom, European Union, Argentina. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to speak on behalf of the GRULAC about this item 3, mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review. The GRULAC region would like to express its support to the enhanced multidimensional approach to planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, with a view to enhancing the balanced implementation of the Convention at its KMGBF and we expect to engage constructively in the discussions on the global review of collective progress. Our region believes that the success of this global review lies in ensuring the effective participation of developing countries and being a party-led process that addresses the status of implementation of our goals and targets, identifying gaps in means of implementation as well as opportunities to enhance international cooperation. Having said that, we still will require further clarification on the proposal to establish an advisory committee as the best approach to ensure party leadership. We recognize the value of having regional and sub-regional dialogues to identify common barriers in the region in order to address the main challenges and identify opportunities for the national implementation of the KMGVF. These dialogues will not only be useful and efficient spaces to share experiences on how to address common challenges, but also to identify opportunities in the development and implementation of national targets. Regarding the proposal of an open-ended forum for voluntary country review, we still believe further clarification and discussion among parties is needed on its possible outcomes and utility. To end, GRULAC also wants to express that while it understands that the voluntary commitment by non-state actors based on the template to record can support the successful implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the process may result complicated and still needs refinement. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. The parties in line are Morocco, Switzerland, United Kingdom, European Union, Argentina, New Zealand. Morocco, you have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Morocco congratulates the Secretariat for the progress made to set out all the elements of the multidimensional approach for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, which are the subjects of discussions under this item of the agenda at SBI 4. On the second element of this approach, relating to national reports, Morocco is in favour of the model of national reports and the online reporting tool as set out in Annex 1 to the document CBD SBI 4.4 and supports the comments which will be made by South Africa on behalf of the African group. On the last element of the multidimensional approach, on information on the involvement of non-state actors with the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, Morocco welcomes the elements for reports set out in Annex 2 to the document. However, Morocco is concerned of the heterogeneity of non-state actors, which will make drafting this type of report difficult. To this end, Morocco proposes that indigenous peoples and local communities and the private sector each have a separate report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Morocco. Switzerland, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Switzerland considers the strengthened mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting and review as adopted by COP15 to be essential tools for the successful implementation of the KMGVF. With regard to the proposed COP decision, on paragraph 2 and the process on the tools for reporting, Switzerland is of the view that it is of value for parties to collaborate with the reporting processes of other biodiversity-related conventions, including by using a modular data reporting tool such as START to avoid duplication and benefit from synergies. On paragraph 6, and with regard to the suggested open-ended forum for voluntary country review, we should await the results of the piloting of the forum during SBI 5 before taking a decision. In any case, a potential forum should focus on the voluntary sharing of best practices from parties based on the existing results and should be efficient and not create additional administrative burden for parties. On paragraph 10, and with regard to the elements and outcomes of the global review, we consider it to be important that the global review and its elements result in concrete recommendations by COP on how to address possible challenges and gaps in the implementation. On paragraph 11 and the proposed advisory committee for the global review. In general, we support increased oversight by parties for the preparation of the global report. While we note that currently there are 2 separate advisory committees proposed, we can support the establishment of one ad hoc technical advisory committee that is time-bound and that focuses on overseeing the global report. Oversight of other aspects of the global review should be assumed by the COP Bureau. On paragraph 12 and 13, and with regard to the global report on collective progress, Switzerland considers the global report to be a key element of the global review. We prefer not to call this report Global Biodiversity Outlook, GBO, to distinguish it from the previous reports GBO 1 to 5. Furthermore, we suggest to build on the results of SABSA 25 with regard to the details of the global report. To conclude, Mr. Co-Chair, we consider the outcomes of Bern 3 conference on cooperation among biodiversity-related conventions of high relevance to this agenda item. The Bern 3 conference was organized by UNEP in January 2024 and brought together representatives of parties and secretariats of 16 MEAs to discuss how the different conventions can best contribute to the implementation of the KMGBF. The outcome report is published as in 15 document and mentions inter alia that it is critical that relevant MEAs contribute to and are visible at the global review. In particular, it is mentioned that MEAs should contribute to the global report with their own concise chapter on interlinkages with and contributions to the KMGBF. Mr. Chair, we have submitted our suggested changes in writing. I thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. United Kingdom, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. The global review of collective progress, which is based on the best available evidence, party-driven, participatory, and is built around clear timelines, roles, and responsibilities, is fundamental to the achievement of the KMGBF. The global report is a key element of the global review, and we are pleased that we made good progress at SABSA 25 in agreeing many of its elements and to establish an ad hoc scientific and technical advisory group for its preparation, and to conduct an informal technical dialogue among parties and non-state actors. We request the Executive Secretary to integrate the recommendation from SABSA 25 to the draft recommendation from SBI 4 so they can be considered in tandem. National reports are the primary source of information for the global report. We support, with very minor amendments to ensure consistency and clarity, the draft reporting template for the 7th and 8 national reports, which was agreed at COP15 and has since been updated by the Secretariat. Time is short, and we don't want to spend a lot of time discussing this annex at SBI 4. We thank the Secretariat for the note on the procedures for the global review. We note that the proposed timeline currently focuses mostly on the global report, and we request the Executive Secretary to update it to capture the timeline for other elements of the global review in light of the discussions here. We feel the format of the peer review of the global report also needs to be clarified. We should avoid creating new bodies and processes which place unnecessary burdens on parties, the Secretariat, and the subsidiary bodies, and which have no added value. In this regard, we do not support establishing an advisory committee in its current form, as we feel that many of the proposed functions can and should be undertaken by SBI and/or its bureau. We also feel that at this meeting, it would be premature to agree to conducting an open-ended forum for voluntary country review at SBI meetings held prior to the 17th, 18th, and 19th meetings of the Conference of the Parties, or to agree it as an element of the global review. Before we consider this further, we want to see how the piloting of this open-ended forum goes at SBI 5. Non-state actors are our key partners in delivering the global biodiversity framework. We support a simple and standardized way for communicating their commitments so that their contributions can be encouraged and understood. Recognizing that non-state actors do not have reporting obligations and recognizing also differences in capacities, we should avoid making reporting unnecessarily onerous. We therefore suggest some amendments to streamline the reporting elements in Annex 2. We have provided our proposed amendments in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. The parties in line are European Union, Argentina, New Zealand, Mexico, Japan, Canada. European Union, you have the floor, please.
Dear Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, I'm speaking on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. Solid provisions on planning, monitoring, reporting and review are crucial for fostering implementation. Hence, we thank the Secretariat for the preparations for this agenda item, including the draft SBI recommendation. Let me raise the following points. First, we broadly support the proposed procedures for the global review of implementation with two main changes. For simplicity and efficiency, we see no need for creating an advisory group in addition to the ad hoc technical advisory group already foreseen by Substa. The COP Bureau should remain responsible for the general overview of the process in line with normal procedures. However, to generate appropriate political attention, we suggest appointing two persons, for instance, envoys or co-facilitators, who, together with the CBD Executive Secretary, foster broad understanding and uptake of findings, gaps and solutions across regions, both in the preparatory phase before COP, as well as in the response phase during and after COP. We submitted in writing the terms of reference reflecting our suggestions for the mandate of these persons. Furthermore, we are ready to test the new open-ended forum for voluntary country review at SBI 5. We suggest various changes to the proposed modus operandi, notably to make it less prescriptive and to ensure that the regional dialogues serve the global review of implementation as appropriate. However, we reserve our final position on this mechanism until we have the experience at SBI 5. We also support the revised template for the 7th and 8th national report with a few technical precisions. And we support the template for reporting by stakeholders on their commitments, with one addition to clarify any possible links with NBSAPs. This template should, however, remain short and easy to fill out. Finally, on the outcome of Substa 25 that SBI is requested to consider, we prefer not to reopen agreed text and will submit our views on bracketed elements in writing. Note that we reserve the right to comment on other parts in case these would be reopened. We already uploaded our proposed amendments in writing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, European Union. New Zealand, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. New Zealand considers the global review as a critical event for reinforcing our collective efforts and actions towards achieving the successful implementation of the KMGBF. We therefore support using the draft decision contained in document SBI 4/4 as the basis for our work here in Nairobi, but have a number of proposed changes, in particular to the draft global review procedures. In the elements of the global review in paragraph 10 of the draft decision, New Zealand would propose including two additional elements. One would be to include the outcomes of a technical dialogue phase after 10C, where parties would have the opportunity to discuss what a wide range of inputs are telling us and to formulate policy-relevant insights and recommendations. These inputs, which could be drawn together very inclusively, could include direct scientific and technical inputs, inputs from other MEAs and other relevant international organizations, stakeholder and civil society inputs, and independent analyses of the progress, gaps, or trends against the GBF, including based on the indicators. Secondly, after paragraph 10E, which proposes high-level discussions among parties, New Zealand suggests we could also include an extra step here comprising a COP response. We don't think, for example, it would be sufficient if the COP were just to note the outcomes of the global review. Therefore, New Zealand suggests that we establish a sixth element here, 10F, which would comprise the COP response to the global review. This could read along the lines of a response by the COP to the outcomes of the global review of collective progress, such as guidance to parties with a view to improving actions and efforts as appropriate. This would be built on paragraph 2 of SBI 4/4 add 2, but we would recognize it as a discrete step of the global review. We think this will help create political commitment to a strong COP response that will galvanize increased global action and support. Finally, we have some additional comments around the global review report, the proposed establishment of an advisory committee, and the national report template, which we will submit in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, New Zealand. Argentina, you have the floor, please.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates. Argentina aligns itself with the statement made by Colombia on behalf of GRULAC. Argentina takes note of the documents provided under Agenda Item 3, which we will negotiate with the aim of parties focusing their efforts on the implementation of the goals and targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Argentina believes that the SBI should focus its work on the discussion of the modalities of the global review, ensuring a process led by the parties, which is transparent, with effective and equitable participation of developing countries, and which prevents the duplication of efforts. We believe that the global review should achieve a balance in the implementation of the global framework to assess collective progress without focusing on individual parties, and should include non-prescriptive considerations. Argentina can support the global review being based on a global report and recommendations prepared by SBSTA and the SBI, and on discussions of high level. Nevertheless, in this instance, we don't believe that the global review should include global analyses or the outcomes of an open forum whose relevance has not been tested. In addition, Argentina believes that the SBI should think about the characteristics of the outcome of the global review. This should reflect in a balanced manner the three goals of the Convention and include references to means of implementation for developing countries. Argentina believes that the process proposed to oversee the global review and the production of the global report should be amended. The current design of the informal advisory group does not ensure the intergovernmental characteristic which the process should respect. In addition, it should be clear that the global report will be negotiated by parties prior to COP17. On the template for commitments of non-state actors, Argentina foresees several difficulties. We believe it's necessary for each party to have the possibility of conducting an analysis on the contributions reported in its national territory. This would ensure the veracity, prevent greenwashing, and ensure the prevention of duplications or double counting. Finally, on the open-ended forum for country-by-country review, Argentina recommends reconsidering whether we want to use the valuable and scarce time of SBI 5 in a discussion focused on individual parties, and which would not necessarily provide added value for a review of a global nature. Argentina urges everyone to be realistic on the 5 months remaining for us before COP16. We need to prioritize aspects of this agenda item which need to be adopted at Cali. Argentina will take part in a constructive manner in this process. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Argentina. Mexico, you have the floor, please.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mexico supports the statement of GULAC on this topic. In general, we agree with a global review process which will enable us to identify progress made in achieving the goals and targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Nevertheless, we would like to call attention to the fact that it's very important that we have a global review of collective progress in a robust manner, which is effective and which will enable us to take collective decisions in a timely manner. In this regard, we call attention to the amount of time and resources which will be dedicated to a process with many review steps, which does not really tackle the true challenge for all, which is implementation of our national strategies on biodiversity and achieving and setting out national targets in order to contribute to global targets. We have carefully gone through the multidimensional approach for planning, monitoring, and reporting and review, and we believe that this mechanism could simplify considerably, in particular, if we consider the added value that the open-ended forum and review process could have. Therefore, we agree with Switzerland and the United Kingdom on the need to discuss the outcomes of the open-ended forum and with the establishment of a single process. Paragraph 15 of the document on modus operandi of the open-ended forum clearly indicates that the outcomes of the pilot forum, which is held on 16th and 17th of September 2020, were difficult to sum up due to the differences in the scope and themes of the presentations made by countries, and therefore it was not possible to identify conclusions or lessons learned from the exercise. For FPI4, there was a revised modus operandi of these fora for voluntary country review of implementation, which could have a value in identifying regional trends in terms of barriers and common factors for countries in each region. However, this identification of patterns is diluted or atomized when it comes to making individualized presentations during the open-ended forum. We have made some proposed changes to the draft recommendation on Annex 2 of the document on the reporting on voluntary commitments. We believe that we need to be very careful with the amount of information requested, since it could result in additional burden, significant one, for non-state actors and dissuade them from contributing and avoiding from reporting their contributions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mexico. I would like to inform the parties in queue. Japan, Canada, Norway, India, Ethiopia, Indonesia. Japan, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Japan believes the planning, monitoring, reporting, and review mechanism is one of the most important elements strengthened under the GBF. We generally support the draft proposal as the content needs to be finalized to ensure that it is robust, functional, and practical mechanism. The draft template for national reporting has been decided at COP15, it is also crucial to finalize the content without delay so that it can be made available for all countries to use the online tool, online reporting tool. We also decided at COP15 to use a multi-dimensional approach to use the review mechanism, multi-sectoral involvement through reporting of commitments by non-state actors, voluntary country reviews, and country peer review would provide opportunities for enhancing mutual learning and sharing good practices in the implementation of the GBF. Japan expects that these multidimensional approaches will have potential to enhance transparency and contribute to review process as well as capacity building through all methods. We would like to learn more about those approaches to determine the most effective and efficient review mechanism. Regarding SBI 4/4/2 on the global review, we support the specific timeline and the content of the starting discussions on the draft global report almost 6 months before COP17. As you are aware, the global stocktake of the Paris Agreement was conducted at COP28/CMA5 last year. Its process will be discussed at the subsidiary body meeting in June. We believe such processes will also be a valuable case for us to consider the procedure of the global review. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Japan. Canada, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Before all else, Canada wishes to stress the importance of this agenda item. Ensuring that we all monitor, report, and review progress in meeting our commitments in a common, universal way by using headline indicators and reporting templates will enable us to efficiently assess if we are on track to meet the KMGBF. Canada has a few questions and comments to share on the various pieces included in this agenda item. We look forward to discussing these ideas during the meeting. In the interest of time, we wish to share a few general thoughts. Our specific suggestions will be submitted in writing. First, regarding the national reporting template, Canada is generally satisfied with the document and hopes that SBI can recommend its adoption. Second, Canada is supportive of the global review of progress that, one, takes into account the best available science and information from all relevant sources, including Indigenous knowledge with the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples. Two, that generates a communicable report outlining the state of collective progress. And three, that results in clear recommendations on how to address any relevant gaps to help ensure the achievement of the 2030 targets. Most importantly, Canada would like to express concern regarding the efficiency of the current proposed process to complete the global review of collective progress, as it is complex, has a tight deadline, and increases the capacity burden on both the Secretariat and the parties. We look forward to continued discussions to find a way forward that is more streamlined and uses the Secretariat and the parties' capacity efficiently. Specifically, Canada would like to work with parties to clarify the ultimate objective of the global review and the relationship between the advisory group and the advisory committee and their respective roles. This approach could include actions such as combining the advisory group and the advisory committee into one entity, reducing the number of actions in the current proposed timeline, and specifying the intended objective of the review in the recommended text. Finally, regarding the open-ended forum for voluntary peer review, we are supportive of having a pilot session at SBI 5 to test the modalities contained in Addendum 1. We believe that this will be key to inform our discussions on the modalities at COP16. As such, a report of the piloted open forum should be prepared and shared with, for COP16's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Norway, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Norway will contribute to the completion of an effective system for planning, monitoring, reporting and review with procedures under the auspices of the COP with the SBI in the driver's seat. For the global review, Norway places emphasis on the following. The global review is an evidence-based process with SBI in the driver's seat that consists of a technical part that covers all goals and targets and a political part in which is the end point. And that we wish is to be a COP decision that addresses the items covered by the technical part. The global review is not a document. It is a process where the national reports and the IPBS reviews are some of the main sources. We also have other sources, such as the global report from Substa. Norway thinks that the process should not be too heavy and institutionalized. We do not think we need an advisory group. We do think it is a good idea to appoint co-chairs for the process, one from the Global South and one from the Global North. It is important that the global review process is transparent and that civil society and indigenous peoples and local communities and other stakeholders participate. Compared to other elements based on lessons learned, we should put less emphasis on the open-ended forum, and here I would reiterate Mexico's comments. It is important that the global review process is transparent and that civil society and indigenous peoples and local communities participate, and I already noted that. The report for which Substa is responsible for should not be called the Global Biodiversity Outlook. We are looking at something here that does not duplicate IPBES and which is more tailored for the needs of the global review. Norway does not want science to be censored. Therefore, Norway does not only want scientific reports that are intergovernmentally reviewed or only reviewed by Substa. We will submit our comments in writing, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. India acknowledges the adoption of national reporting template for the 7th and 8th national reports. Also noted that provision for submission of same is being made available in the online reporting tool. You would like to mention that you adopted the standard template provided in the Annex 1 to the COP 15/6 for updating the NBSAP and adopting national biodiversity targets in accordance with the national priorities, circumstances and capabilities. India would also prepare its national report in the form of national document comprising all elements related to biodiversity, including framework for capacity building, resource mobilization, mainstreaming of biodiversity. We invite the Secretariat to consider the option for including country profile to be provided in the portal so as to clearly demonstrate the biodiversity richness and institutional mechanism established for the implementation of KMGBF. India argues that global review needs to be robust and comprehensive and should analyze the progress on the implementation of KMGF. We also welcome the adoption of revised modus operandi for the open-ended forum for voluntary country review. We would like to state that voluntary country review may be prioritized by representing each region so that issues, challenges prevailing in each region may be identified and addressed that will aid to effective implementation of KMGBF. We would like to mention that India was one of the early countries to have undertaken a peer review under the Convention of Biological Diversity. While welcome the adoption of core reporting elements for commitments from non-state actors towards KMGBF, the involvement of non-state actors in the activities of KMGF are also devised as per the requirements of the country. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. Ethiopia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ethiopia extends its gratitude to the Secretariat for developing additional guidance on the targets of the GBF, which has improved clarity. Also supports the establishment of advisory committee for the global review. Acknowledge the Secretariat's effort and also seeks refinement of online reporting system for convention, its protocols, and KM-GBF implementation, emphasizing user-friendliness. Collaboration among parties, governments, and relevant organizations is crucial for sharing experience and learning, lesson learning. Such collaborations could alleviate the effect of inadequate financial, human, technical resources, as well as ensure timely and reliable access to knowledge. Ethiopia acknowledges the Secretariat's development of mechanism to track non-state actors' commitment and contributions as a part of multidimensional approach as indicated in Annex 2. Enhances global understanding of GBF implementation process, which requires the follow-up on its effectiveness. Finally, Ethiopia endorses the role of high-level discussion at the 17th and 19th COP meetings on KM-GBF implementation, which is vital for securing political backing to strengthen GBF implementation across all parties at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethiopia. Next in line are Indonesia, South Africa, Russian Federation. Indonesia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this agenda, item 3, Indonesia would like to convey 4 points. First, Indonesia welcomes and is grateful for developments in the process and tools used in monitoring, reporting, and reviewing. Second, based on recommendations submitted for parties to report via the online reporting tool to submit national report before February 28, 2026, we are of the view that it would be difficult to submit national reports without a more detailed module to use the reporting tool, along with the necessary training to understanding the tool. Third, we are pleased to report that we are at the final stage of completing our NBSAP document. In doing so, we recognize several challenges in synchronizing the national to global indicators, in particular the different position of various countries in the starting point for the full implementation of headline indicators, which cause differences in indicator achievement when a global review is carried out. In light of the above, we are of the view that there is room for improvement in implementing mechanism at the national level, including the need for capacity building and other relevant support for monitoring framework. And finally, fourth, Indonesia would like to support Colombia on behalf of GRULAC on the need for para 10 of the COP draft decision to clarify that the global review must also assess the progress in providing the means of implementation to developing countries, in line with decision 15/6. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. South Africa, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. South Africa makes this statement on behalf of the Africa Group. Africa welcomes with appreciation the work undertaken under the mechanisms for planning, reporting, and review. We support the recommendations of the Conference of Parties to adopt the national reporting template for the 7th and 8th national report and submit that these templates can be improved by taking into account all the considerations of the implementation as defined in Section C of the GBF. In this regard, reporting templates and guidelines in Annex 1 and 2 on document CBD/SBI/4/4 will have to be amended in line with the textual recommendations that will be submitted in writing. We are of the view that the objectives, principles, considerations, and key review questions of the global review should be outlined beforehand to distinguish the intentions of this review from any other forms of analysis or assessments that exist in the convention and eliminate any sense of assumptions, misinterpretation, and confusion. Articulation of the global review objectives is crucial as it also helps the types of questions to be formulated to guide the review and the subsequent data sources and information to be gathered for the review. It is also important that an analysis of the means of implementation, resources, and tools should form part of the global analysis and not just analyzing what parties have committed in the NB-subs and the national targets. Chair, the successful implementation of the monitoring framework is very crucial for the review process, as the process also depends on the quality of data. Regarding the global report on collective progress in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal GBF, envisaged under Section 1C, Africa's understanding is that the product of the global review will be presented in the form of this global report on collective progress in implementing the GBF and not as an element of the global review itself. With regard to modus operandi of the open-ended forum for voluntary country review on paragraph 2 under objectives and considerations, Africa would like to reaffirm that the conservation of biological diversity is a common concern of humankind and that states have sovereign rights over their own biological resources. On this account, Africa would like to stress the importance of a forum that is facilitative, not punitive, peer learning, and experience sharing, respecting the sovereign rights of states over their biological resources that should not impose an added burden on parties and should complement and build on processes such as voluntary review, peer review. We therefore recommend that the revisions of NB-subs and setting national targets be amended to allow parties who are unable to update their NB-subs to submit their national targets by COP16. And this proposal is in line with paragraphs 1A, 6, and 7 of Decision 15.6. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. Russian Federation, you have the floor, please.
Спасибо, господин председатель.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In a general manner, we do support the paragraphs of the draft decision of COP16 on this issue. For paragraph 4, to welcome non-state actors at presenting their contributions to the implementation of the fracturation of the framework, we need to have a provision on the need for the importance of signalling these initiatives to the national authorities that are relevant. All of this must be communicated to the national focal points of the CBD. That will allow us to coordinate efforts at national level and to better prepare our national reports. And furthermore, to transfer these globally. Paragraph 11 should include a reflection on the contribution of non-state actors to the realization of the principally national objectives in the context of the national strategy. Under item 8 of the recommendation, I note that the open forum should indeed be a platform which is open for everyone. We do not know exactly yet how well it's going to work or how effective it will be, and therefore the text of the recommendation will need to be amended. In the same vein, we need to point out under 9 that the forum could contribute to the global review of collective progress. First of all, we need to have the results. In a general manner, I think it's somewhat premature to organize a forum from the SBI 5. We already have many points on the agenda, not enough data yet. Many delegations said this before me, and we won't have enough data to look at these national data. We already have a great deal, as was said by Argentina and other countries, wherein we do agree with the 7th national report, but there should be an elimination of any repetitions. The attributions of the consultative group on the collective program on the implementation of this plan should take into account the fact that the preparation of the global review should be undertaken by the parties themselves and under their own direction. Therefore, it's necessary to have reasonable and sufficient representation in the composition of the committee, and making sure that this is in time for the CBD. It's not appropriate that observers should participate in the assessment of the achievement of the mandate. It seems necessary to clarify the statutes for an ad hoc expert group on this point under Substa, and the formation of the informal advisory group, as I said, would need to be based on the importance of ensuring that there is geographical balance in its formation, and we will give you specific comments in writing. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Russian Federation. South Sudan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. South Sudan aligns itself with the statement made by South Africa on behalf of the African region on Agenda Item 3 on mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review under document CBD/SBI1, SBI/4/4. South Sudan envisages a robust monitoring, reporting, and review framework to track progress alongside the MBSAP alignment and review exercise, thanks to the timely financial support from the Global Environment Facility through UNEP in this endeavor. My delegation chair welcomes the document and would like to highlight some interventions on Annex 1 regarding the reporting template for the 7th and 8th national reports and the enclosure. Some of the questions in the templates may need to be unpacked and simplified for ease of grasping and reporting by the parties. On Annex 2, commitment on reporting by non-state actors on the KMGBF, further discussions and guidance are required in this particular section. South Sudan will submit the textual inclusion to the Secretariat in writing. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Sudan. Gabon, you have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We support the position of the African Group presented by South Africa. We congratulate the Secretariat for the quality of the documents that have been provided for us. We support, in overall, the draft recommendation FBI 4 for COP16 and Annex 1 relating to the model for the 7th and 8th national reports. In fact, Gabon supports the multidimensional approach for the reporting in order to improve the implementation of the CBD and the KMGBF as formulated in decision 15.6. As far as the open-ended ad hoc group for the implementation of the framework, we are concerned by the organization of this initiative, which it would seem would be difficult for it to prosper from its inception. We have a couple of points to note under CBD/4. Under the recommendations, we'd like to have some clarifications on the use of the term decides, which sends for a decision, because we would like to know whether it's possible that the SBI decides itself. Under paragraph 13 of this draft decision, the recommendation relating to 25.2 is not inserted, and this is within brackets, but substat 25 has already entered, and this means that this makes it difficult for the Secretariat to provide us documents which are, under point 2, for the difficulties to follow the guidelines on MBSAPs, we're asking ourselves the question whether the dialogues on the MBSAPs are sufficient to allow parties to follow these guidelines, or whether we should have supplementary strategies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Geba. Brazil, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Brazil aligns itself with the statement delivered by Colombia on behalf of GRULAG. We are confident that the global review of collective progress will be a fundamental tool to analyze progress being made on the implementation of the key MGBF, a set of actions taken together by all parties are leading to the achievement of the mission, goals, and targets of the framework, as well as to address gaps in means of implementation and support developing countries. And under Brazil's statement during subset 25, we are of the view that the national reports are the primary source of information to support the development of the global report and guide the global review of collective progress. From our perspective, the global review must be a party-driven process and enable the effective participation of developing countries. It should be conducted primarily on the basis of the global report, and it should not be policy prescriptive. Though we recognize that the regional and sub-regional dialogues and the voluntary country review forum may help countries enhance implementation, we understand that those tools are intended to share experiences and are still at an early stage of development. We further believe that the procedures for voluntary country review may add complexity to the SBI 5 agenda. We understand that the modus operandi presented in document Ad 1 should provide more reassurances that this would be a party-led process, and we have not been provided with information on how the agendas of regional dialogues are to be decided. Therefore, we are not convinced that the open-ended forum for voluntary country review should be a component of the global review, and we understand that the forum should be deferred to SBI 6. Similar concerns would apply to the consideration of high-level discussions under COP presidencies, as those discussions are usually convened at the presidency's discretion, building on priorities that the presidencies may wish to address. We would suggest a more nuanced approach whereby the presidencies may be invited to consider the global review in the preparation of the high-level discussions. Regarding the steps that will guide the global review, we fail to understand the added value of the advisory committee that has been proposed, as such committee seems to overlap with the technical and scientific advisory group proposed by SBSTA. Its composition and the criteria for appointing members seem rather restrictive and may not enable a fully inclusive, transparent, and party-led process. We understand that SAP suggests on the document Ad 2 Rev 1, where SBSTA and SBI would have the opportunity to review the report, would be sufficient to ensure party leadership and oversight. If countries decide to proceed with the establishment of an advisory committee, we are of the view that this committee should have an intergovernmental nature and include a higher number of representatives from parties to ensure equitable geographical representation. It should further identify pathways to overcome gaps in means of implementation. We understand that the templates for the national reports provide a good basis. At the same time, we understand that the enclosure section related to specific COP decisions may add unnecessary reporting burden. Regarding Annex 2 on commitments by non-state actors, we would recommend deleting the reference to private type certification standards or validation mechanisms, given that their potential costs may actually discourage actors from engaging with the key MGBF process. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Uganda, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Uganda, on behalf of South Africa, reaffirms the position of Africa region in regard to planning, monitoring, reporting, and review. Planning, monitoring, and reporting on biodiversity conservation has been stepped up in the Africa region and climaxed at the recent alignment of NBSAPs to the GBF. For instance, Uganda, in its third National Development Plan, that runs up to 2025, and in collaboration with stakeholders, is working to strengthen relevant biodiversity recovery programs on forests, wetlands, among others. Uganda already developed the 10-year action plan for restoration of the environment and natural resources, and this runs from 2021 to 2031, which will further enhance biodiversity recovery. Uganda therefore welcomes the modus operandi for the open-ended forum for voluntary country review of implementation, including online reporting tool. Uganda also calls for cooperation at the regional and international levels to share experiences and lessons learned, including as a contribution to regional dialogues preceding the open-ended forum for voluntary country review conducted by the subsidiary body on implementation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. Parties in queue are Malaysia, Zimbabwe, Philippines, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, China. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Malaysia has already revised its national biodiversity strategies and action plans, or NBSAP, based on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, a monitoring system is currently in development to help and facilitate the reporting at the national level. In this respect, Malaysia would like to express gratitude to the Secretariat in providing technical guidance, and we look forward to the parties' deliberations for Malaysia to improve further. Malaysia therefore support, among others, the national reporting template for the 7th and 8th national reports contained in Annex 1 of the present decision, based on further deliberations by parties, and to make use of the template for the 7 national reports and the online reporting tool prior to its submission by the deadline of 28 February 2026. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Malaysia. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe supports the statement made by South Africa on behalf of the Africa Group. Chair, Zimbabwe appreciates the role of the national biodiversity strategies and action plans as the main instrument for implementing the convention at national level, and the role of the national reports in monitoring and reviewing the implementation of the convention, as well as the GBF. Zimbabwe supports the core reporting elements for commitments from non-state actors developed by the Secretariat, and encourages further development of the same. Chair, Zimbabwe appreciates the reporting template for communicating national targets, as well as the online reporting tool, and calls for further development of that same tool, taking into consideration lessons learned from parties. Zimbabwe also recognizes the importance of using the headline indicators and provide responses on binary questions in accordance with the KMGBF monitoring framework, but equally calls for the completion of the development of more indicators to ensure that all targets of the framework are monitored. Zimbabwe also agrees to the establishment of an inclusive advisory committee for the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We also emphasize the provision of financial resources for in-country consultations to fund certain components of the implementation of the open-ended forum for the voluntary country review as provided for in document CBD/SBCI/4/4/Ad1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. Philippines, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Philippines welcomes the recommendations on the agenda item 3, mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, as outlined in document SBI 4/4. The Philippines appreciates the work conducted by the Secretariat and its effort to further develop the online reporting tool for the submission of national targets aligned with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the submission of national reports. Mr. Chair, the Philippines is of the view that the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework must be comprehensive, inclusive, and reflect the resources mobilized to deliver on the Global Biodiversity Framework. At the regional level, this global review will also be complemented by the ASEAN Biodiversity Outlook to provide an analysis on the progress in achieving the KMGBF targets.
The Philippines appreciates the work and contributions of indigenous peoples and local communities, as well as the women and the youth, recognizing that their full and active participation is essential for the implementation of the KM-GBF, especially in the development of the MBSAPs. The recently concluded second National Roundtable discussions of indigenous peoples and biodiversity that IP groups organized last May 5 to 7, 2024, demonstrates a strong dedication to maintaining the roles and contributions of indigenous peoples in the Philippines. There is a prevailing belief that indigenous knowledge systems and customs will strengthen and enhance the NBSAP, particularly as national governments begin to support the Convention on Biological Diversity. While we welcome the core reporting elements for commitments from non-state actors and provides those elements for the consideration of the subsidiary body in Annex 2 of the draft decision contained in Section 3 of the present note, the Philippines also recognizes the mechanisms for citizen science as an inclusive and participatory mechanism for indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth concerning monitoring and reporting, and for sharing experiences and lessons learned related to the implementation of the Convention, National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plans, and the KM-GBF. The Philippines also call on parties to support the preparation of local biodiversity outlooks as the indigenous peoples and local communities' contributions to the implementation of the KM-GBF in partnership with indigenous peoples and local communities, parties, and relevant partners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Quater Diva, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Côte d'Ivoire lines itself with the statement made by South Africa on behalf of Africa. It takes note of the report of the Secretariat on progress in the implementation of the enhanced multidimensional approach for planning, reporting, and review in line with Decision 15.6, paragraph 29, and the two addenda, respectively, on the modus operandi of the open-ended forum, on an optional review by countries, and procedures relating to the global review of collective progress made in the implementation of the framework. Côte d'Ivoire congratulates the Secretariat on the development of additional guidance on the targets of the framework and the strengthening of the functionalities of the online reporting tool, as well as additional guidance currently being developed to help parties. On the voluntary peer review, the establishment of an open-ended forum for a voluntary review by countries and taking into account of information on the commitments of non-state actors of the enhanced multidimensional approach for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review could be tools which consolidate the legitimacy of results. However, Côte d'Ivoire notes that these tools need to be based on the sovereign right of states. Indeed, Côte d'Ivoire has always striven to sustainably protect and manage its biological resources. On that basis, my country supports the idea that these fora should be more constructive platforms to share experiences in order to guide states and make the process more efficient. Côte d'Ivoire suggests taking into account the report on global perspectives on biodiversity during the global review of progress made in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. All of this would contribute to consolidating the results of the global report on collective progress made. To conclude, my country encourages the organization of more regional and sub-regional dialogues, which are true for exchanges between the parties, enabling them to express their expectations, their needs, and their concerns. Our observations on the draft recommendations will be added to this declaration, which we'll submit in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. Cameroon, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Cameroon allies itself with a statement made by South Africa on behalf of the African Group. Cameroon welcomes the efforts to support the implementation of the enhanced multidimensional approach for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review by the Secretariat through the development of the online reporting tool and the online follow-up tool. However, it should be noted that Annex 1 of the Decision 15.6 sets out additional recommendations on the implementation of the framework, and others are being developed. This caused an issue in terms of harmonization of elements to be submitted with changing recommendations, and the reference base to use for the analysis MB-SAPs. Therefore, we need further reflection on the global review process. Cameroon welcomes the enhanced development of the tool for the reporting of national reports. However, it doesn't take into account issues related to the implementation of the Montreal framework as defined in section C of the framework. It should be noted that the definition of this section, which was discussed at COP15, highlights considerations of point A on contributions and rights of indigenous peoples and local communities, up to point R on biodiversity and health, including means of implementation. On information on the commitments of non-state actors relating to the framework, Cameroon welcomes and encourages the development of voluntary commitments by non-state actors. We should note, though, that commitments by non-state actors should be informed in national reports in order to take advantage of mutual efforts to reinforce the biodiversity in countries, transparency, and shared responsibility. Cameroon finally suggests lightening procedures through the non-establishment of the advisory committee so that delays seen in the submission of revised MB-SAPs or national targets do not have significant impact on the schedule for the development and submission of national reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameroon. The parties in the queue are China and Ghana. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and reviewing are essential for comprehensive, effective, and balanced implementation of the KMGBF and the realization of its goals and targets. We thank the Secretariat and the Chair of SBI for the documents prepared, which provide a good foundation for further discussions. China knows that in accordance with its mandate, this SBI meeting is fully packed with agenda items. China suggests that, in view of the time constraints, consultations on this agenda item could focus on the procedures for the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the KMGBF. We could try to reach consensus on how to establish a party-driven global review arrangement that focuses on actions and progress and bridges the gaps in the means of implementation. China believes that based on the current text, the global review process can be further enhanced to improve operability, reduce the burden on parties, avoid duplication, and maintaining transparency. We look forward to further discussions with all parties. China welcomes the updated 7th and 8th national report template and believes that the focus should be on strengthening tool development and capacity building so that all parties can start the preparation of the 7th national report as early as possible, according to the guidance, and provide timely input for the global report. China commends the open-ended forum for the voluntary country review, which provides a platform for exchanging experience and enhancing mutual understanding, which further complements the global review. However, whether or not pilots should be conducted during SBI 5 will depend on rational allocation of time. China recognizes the contribution of non-state actors and their visibility. We believe the Annex on NSA contribution provides clear guidance. Effective reporting in this regard could benefit from further streamlining and classification. China will support our statement and comments in writing. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, China. Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Ghana supports the statement made by South Africa on behalf of Africa on this agenda item. Mr. Chair, Ghana appreciates the work done by the Secretariat and welcomes the further development of the online reporting tool as the tool for the submission of our national reports. We, however, wish that some changes be made to the template for submitting the 7th and 8th national reports as currently captured in Annex 1 of document CBD/SBI/4/4. For instance, we call for the introduction of a background of the country submitting the national report in Section 1 of Annex 1, and an introduction of an option for achieved as a response in Section 3 of Annex 1 in response to indicating the current level of progress towards this target. This is necessary because some of the GBF targets are directly linked to certain Aichi biodiversity targets. We also express the desire for further guidance on how to report on the enclosures. Though we welcome the opportunity for non-state actors to report, we wish for further clarity on Annex 2 of reporting of the commitments by non-state actors. Mr. Chair, we look forward to the funding support from the GEF Round 8. We look forward to the support from GEF 8 round of allocations to facilitate the development of the 7th national report to submit our national report before the deadline, as mentioned in Decision 15/6, Annex 2, Para 1. We will submit our statement and the proposed text amendments to the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ghana. Friends, we must end now. Tomorrow morning, I will spend 10 minutes on explaining my way forward, and will hear short interventions from IPLCs, women and youth, and other organizations. No other organizations. So, friends, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.